All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mitch McCoy. I'm the Director of Public Affairs and Information for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you for being here today. We wanted to provide you an update on some of the weekend activity. I'm sure some of you also have questions related to our enforcement. This weekend's modified 10 p.m. curfew was effective and was totally centered around safety, but the goal was never enforcement alone. It was prevention, accountability, and connection to resources. Friday night alone, 23 juveniles were detained during curfew enforcement in downtown and downtown west. The youngest was 11 years old. Juveniles were detained in the following areas: 20th in Washington, 19th in Washington, 20th in Market, and 19th in Olive. 17 juveniles reside in St. Louis County, 6 reside in the city of St. Louis. On Saturday and Sunday, 0 juveniles were detained for the curfew, certainly a shift from over the weekend, which reflects community cooperation. Parents and guardians play a critical role, and that accountability remains an important part of this effort. This weekend proved that enforcement and support can work together to build a safer St. Louis. The Reunification Center was staffed with various community resources, including the Office of Violence Prevention, Youth and Family Services, just to name a couple. This is how we create long-term impact in St. Louis. I want to touch a little bit on the Reunification Center. I had a chance to stop by there. This was at a police building here. It was at Central Patrol. And this is really not what you would probably envision of being a reunification center. This was in a very large room. All the kids were together. The resources were right there. They were in circles, being able to communicate with one another and communicate with some of the folks from the Office of Violence Prevention and Youth and Family Services. There were snacks there. There were bottles of water there. And there were police officers having positive engagement with the kids. So it certainly is not what you would envision. I know that there was some talk on social media of them going to some type of court building or being detained in a jail cell. That was not the case. This was in a very large room. Many of you have probably been in the room. It was our roll call room where we have our police officers are there that before their shift they're getting their briefing. So it was certainly a positive engagement with many kids and some of the resources that were there. That is what we have.
Did you recover any weapons?
It's my understanding no weapons or guns were recovered.
So some of the city's older people criticize the curfew, just saying that this won't address the longer term problem as there's a lack of activities and safe spaces for our youth. So what is your response to that?
We're not going to get into a political back and forth battle. The Board of Aldermen worked very closely with the mayor's office. The alders knew, specifically the alders that represent downtown and downtown west. They knew that the curfew was going to be in place, and it is the Board of Aldermen's responsibility to work with, and just like ours, to work with our community stakeholders to build those safe places. But like we said here today, it is not just about enforcement. It was about putting resources in the hands of many families. And I can tell you, because of this police department and because of the mayor's office, there are more families in St. Louis today, our entire region, that have more resources than they went into the weekend with. And it is because of this modified 10 p.m. curfew.
On Friday night, you mentioned that you had some positive feedback and people reaching out to ask, why can't we have a curfew like this in our neighborhood? So if you could talk about that sort of contact you've had and people requesting a 10 o'clock curfew other places.
It was overwhelmingly positive feedback from everyone involved. And to be quite honest, I think that we were kind of taken back by how positive it was. We thought that there would maybe be more pushback on it, but overall, it was very well received. The curfew is a legislative function, and it is in the hands of the Board of Aldermen that appear to be criticizing some of these efforts to look at the curfew, and it is the responsibility of our community and the residents to be vocal they need to call their alders. They need to make those phone calls. And if they want change, that is where legislatively and within local ordinances that happens. There is already a curfew for the entire city. It is midnight on Fridays and Saturdays due to safety concerns and due to the fact that the majority of our shootings 2 weekends ago was in downtown. We made that bold move, which was overwhelmingly successful, to push it to 2 hours earlier. And so the curfew was still in effect for the rest of the city. We just moved it 2 hours earlier. So if the community believes that the curfew should be 2 hours earlier, we will enforce whatever law is passed by the Board of Aldermen.
Were any parents charged or fined?
I'm sorry?
Were any parents charged or fined?
All of the parents will receive summonses this week.
How
And,
many?
and that, I'm glad you asked that because that's a very important question. And Kelly, I'll get to you in just a sec. Parents, if your child was detained over the weekend, you need to be on the lookout in the mail this week or next week to receive that summons because there is a court date and you will have to go to court.
How many parents?
It's my understanding that all of the parents will, for their child's behavior, will be getting a citation.
But how many altogether?
There were 23 juveniles.
What's the
So,
penalty?
Like one or two parents per, I mean.
I don't have those specific numbers, but it's,
23.
there are 23 juveniles that were detained. The parents of the 23 are getting summonses. So it's very possible if a brother and
Yeah.
sister were arrested, that the
Yeah.
parent would be getting 2 citations.
What's the penalty?
You'd have to reach out to the local
But I mean,
court.
summons is, what's the charge?
It is the curfew violation and contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
So.
Hold on, I promise Kelly.
Thank you. Can you talk about what's next and how you're gearing up for the opening day?
Yeah, opening day is a very big day for the city of St. Louis. We're excited about it. We have a detail that is being put together and it is in place. We're putting some final touches on it. It's going to be an exciting day for the city and an exciting day for Cardinals fans and just an exciting day downtown. I think that this past weekend set a very good pace for what our residents and visitors expect. And we're going to do what we can to maintain those high expectations. And I think that we are in close conversations with Mayor Kara Spencer's office regarding possible future plans. We're working collaboratively together to ensure that safety is top of mind. But we'll put some more details out in the coming days related to Cardinals opening day and some of the enforcement plans.
That opening day weekend detail, is that going to involve the highway patrol assisting again?
Everything is on the table. We're not taking anything off. I think that the Highway Patrol was very eager and very excited to help the SLMPD maintain high visibility downtown and make sure that people felt safe, and I think that mission was accomplished.
Could we see them team up more frequently with them? I know you have historically worked with them before, but could we see it happen more frequently to address this officer shortage that you guys have?
I think that anything is on the table, everything is on the table. Safety is our number one priority, and we have a very close relationship with Highway Patrol, and they certainly added to the high visibility downtown over the weekend.
So if the curfew was so effective, would your department consider making it permanent?
Well, it goes right back to what the Board of Aldermen's criticizing us. That's a Board of Aldermen role, so I would encourage you to ask those alders who are critical of some of the enforcement and resources we provided to these families. I'd ask them if they're going to change it.
So just to be clear, the modified curfew is over?
That is correct. The modified curfew was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That modified curfew ended earlier this morning.
And you said the reunification center, why it was so effective is because all of these resources that, these parents and families got these resources. You mentioned the Violence Prevention Center and Youth and Family Services. What other resources did they receive, pamphlets, or get information on?
I would have you reach out to the mayor's office. I don't want to speak for another department, but it's also my understanding the mayor's office will be putting something out later today because it wasn't just those two offices. The resources that were there were other resources, but overall this weekend included multiple city departments. It included the Excise Commission, working very closely with them. As many of you know, and Marquee Lounge closed a couple hours earlier. That changed a lot of dynamics downtown this past weekend. 2 weekends ago, we had 2 people shot outside the Marquee Lounge right in front of our police officers. So Excise Commission played an important role. The Building Division played an important role. The Streets Department played an important role. If you guys went out to Gravois and Morganford within the last few days, you've noticed that there's some changes at that intersection with concrete barriers up on Gravois right now to maybe try and mitigate any future street takeovers. So it is all city departments coming together, all hands on deck, to do what we can to build a safer St. Louis, but it's ultimately making sure that when we are detaining people, we are putting resources in their hands too, because it's not just an enforcement effort. I would also encourage you to go back to the Board of Alders and ask what next steps are they taking to help build and bring some of these activities to St. Louis for our youth.
I know one of the questions that they had was long-term, if wanted to know if you guys would be working with, or the city would be working with the county because to come up with permanent solutions or just more solutions, because 17 out of the 23 were from the county.
From what perspective?
If you guys are considering it,
From an enforcement?
just teaming up together, I guess, to come up with some kind of ideas, especially if 17 out of the 23 were from the county. And if you're seeing more, county teams, then if maybe that would be, a chance that you guys would team up, the city and the county together, to maybe come up with some solutions.
I think that we, from here, I think we've said, and you guys can probably repeat it by heart, that we've always said that this is a regional problem. That's not a fancy talking point we say to deflect. I think that, if anything, this past weekend absolutely proves everything that we have continued to say, and that this is a regional problem and not just a city issue. But we work regularly already with county police. I know that they also have their hands full. We work with our regional partners. We work with law enforcement in the Metro East on the Illinois side. It is a regional issue. And so it isn't just the police department that is part of those conversations. Everyone has to be at the table. And I think the city of St. Louis set that standard this past weekend. When it comes to enforcing the modified curfew, making sure resources were available, and it is city resources that are helping now county families. That is occurring today. And so I think that as we look at this standard that has been set, we will do everything we can to continue to work with our regional partners. But this weekend was a huge success, and I think St. Louis is safer today for a while, really. I mean, when you start looking at the resources that were put in to many families' hands that they didn't have before the weekend started.
I talked to St. Louis Board President Megan Green.
How is she?
She said she would not spend one dime for raises for police or getting more officers as long as it was under state control. How do you react to that?
I would say that President Green speaks for herself. She's the president of the board. The Board of Police Commissioners approved their expenditure request, and I think that we as a police department have time and time again shown that we are not focused solely on enforcement. We are focused on resources too, and working with community stakeholders to solve our bigger goal. And I think that we all share that goal, and that is to build a safer community for everyone.
Does that disappoint you, what she said? Does it disappoint you?
It really doesn't matter what I think. I'm just the spokesman.
We care what you think.
Were any of the juveniles known to law enforcement, to your knowledge?
I don't know that. I don't know that answer. I can tell you that some of the reaction we are getting from juveniles, and I think that let me also be clear, because I think this goes to maybe some of the Board of Aldermen's concern. We gave multiple warnings for juveniles to leave because it was curfew time. And you all saw that hopefully on our social media videos that were put out. We gave time and time again. There were a couple of reporters that were walking blocks and blocks with us during this. And the juveniles, there was a large group that responded back to our police officers saying, you're not going to be able to detain us, you're not going to be able, you can't take us to juvenile court. That was the reaction from some of the kids. And then they said, you're not even going to get out of your car, we dare you to get out of your car, because you know you can't do anything with us. That is the mindset of some of the kids. And so when we as a police department can help make sure that we're enforcing the law, but then bringing resources directly to the hands of those kids, because there were many parents that had no idea where their kids were. And it was because the kids said they were going to a friend's house or they were going to go to some party, but they came downtown instead. And today there are many families stronger today because of the resources that the city of St. Louis provided, not only to city families, but county families.
You mentioned Friday night, 2 a.m. Update, that there was one child that was taken into custody that the parent or parents refused to come pick up that child. What happened to that child?
So I'm glad you asked about that. We did get an update very early that morning. I believe it was around 3 a.m. There was a parent that eventually picked that child up after the parent originally refused, and we are going to put maybe some more resources towards that family this week.
Can you talk about the ages of the kids, knowing that someone was 11 years old?
Yeah.
It has to be disturbing.
The youngest was 11 years old, going up to 17. That was where the curfew was. It was a wide range of ages. The youngest was 11. I will say that we took as much information in as we could at the reunification center down to schools. So there was a large number of kids that came from one particular school. It was 5 or 6 of them, I think. It was with just one school. So we're looking at that, and we're using the data to help us better understand how we can be a better police department and how we can be a better regional asset to our entire community. So we're looking at some of that data now and trying to determine how we can do that. I can also share with you that we were asking kids as they were coming in how they got downtown. We are already, last week, the mayor's office is helping us lead that effort in communicating with rideshare services to determine if there is a better way that we can communicate with rideshare apps to make sure that kids aren't just being dropped off without a parent or guardian. They have their own policies in terms of services. So it's figuring out how can we be better partners. Those conversations started last week. They're continuing this week, now that we have some of that data.
Did you have to put some of
clarify,
these kids in
on,
handcuffs?
Just
Sure.
to clarify, you said that some of the kids had said that they were going like to house parties or somewhere else, but they ended up downtown.
That's correct.
Had they told their parents that?
No.
Okay. Who did they said that to?
They had told their parents that they were going to a party or
Okay,
going to a
that's
friend's
what I was
house.
trying to-
Yeah.
okay.
But then there was one, I was overhearing the conversation, there was one who had turned off their location services. So their parents couldn't track them on the app. So that's also something, I think as we hear some of this stuff, we have to share it with parents as well, so that way they can be engaged, because kids can be sneaky.
Did you have to put some of these kids in handcuffs?
I don't know exactly how all of them were detained.
Contributing to delinquency of a minor, is that a misdemeanor or
It's an ordinance.
So
But they still have to appear in court.
That, the 11-year-old that the parents initially refused to pick up, did they give a reason why? And what would happen if they just didn't change their mind and still maintain that they refused to pick the child up?
I don't know if the child that was picked up, or the parent that refused was 11. I think their child was actually a little bit older than 11. I think 6. Yeah, so I don't think it was not the 11-year-old. We're having those conversations now. I'm not going to speculate on what those charges could be, but it's very possible they face enhanced charges beyond what other parents are facing
For not picking up the child?
for not picking up their child, or even not picking up their child within a reasonable time.
And what would happen if they just said, no, take them to juvenile? Would you guys do that?
We're not going to get into that. But no, we're not taking the child to juvie. That would be ridiculous and irresponsible on us.
Did you have to take officers from the rest of the city in order to have this focus downtown?
Thank you for that question. No, because we also know that we have neighborhoods to protect. And so we had ample amount of resources downtown. We had the March Madness detail that was in effect, so we had additional police officers just for basketball. But then we have our regular weekend detail, which is even additional police officers that are focused on downtown but can go to other parts of the city or go to Morgan, Ford, and Gravois. areas where there might be street takeovers. But no, neighborhoods were still protected. And to that point, Sean and I actually went up to Fountain Park because we were getting reports of juveniles outside causing a disturbance, being loud, disturbing people from sleeping. And so officers went up there and we moved kids along. So neighborhoods were still very much protected.
Can you walk me through what the parents actually faced when they came here? I can't imagine you just handed Junior over. What did they face? What did they have to go through?
We had to go through a verification process to make sure that who they were saying is actually who they are saying, who are they picking up. We had Major Allen, who is over our juvenile detectives, was there. She was having conversations with a lot of the parents, but there were also people that were coming that was potentially an aunt or a family friend. They were not being released to aunts or family friends. You had to be a parent. And there were many parents that had to come away from work to pick up their child. And we have to make sure that when we're releasing a child that is in our custody, that child is going to a respective guardian or parent. But that parent also needs to know, as they're picking up their child, you need to be watching the mail this week because you are getting that summons, you are being cited, and you will have to go to court.
So just to be clear, it's up to the Board of Aldermen to decide whether, this would become a permanent curfew?
That is correct. So the Board of Aldermen set the almost the rules, right, for the city. So the Board of Aldermen can do that. And what we saw from the mayor was an executive order, which is a temporary order, to change that to a modified curfew. So after the tornado, if you recall, we did the curfew.
Mm-hmm.
That was for everyone. That was adults. That was kids. The mayor has the authority to issue executive orders, and that's what we saw over the weekend. But the Board of Aldermen set long-term ordinances.
What school were the 5 or 6 kids from?
We're not going to release that.
Was it city school?
We're not going to release that. But no,
So it wasn't considered?
it was not in the city.